Welcome to Super Agents Live. This is the one place where you can come and hear the most successful people in real estate. You'll hear how these super agents built their businesses, how they stay productive, and how they stay motivated. Who am I? My name's Toby Salgado, and I made my first million in real estate. And I'm your host for the next 30 minutes while we talk to yet another amazing real estate entrepreneur. Stay tuned.
Let's go! Yeah!
Hello, everybody. What is up? Thanks for tuning back into the program. Now, if you are new, you just found this program, welcome. What you found is the number 2 rated show on iTunes for real estate agents. I'm glad you showed up. And look, if you don't sell real estate, that's okay. This show is really about entrepreneurship, but through the lens of a real estate agent. Now, as you guys know, I talk with top producing agents, coaches, and authors on this show. Now, today's guest, pretty interesting character. Let me give you some quick stats. Now, the recording that you're going to hear in a minute or so, or a few minutes, I did a few months ago. We have since ended the year, and he finished off with 579 transactions. Finished 2014, I should say, with 579 transactions and $201 million worth of volume. This guy is about units. And here's what we talk about on the show. We talk about, for him, when he was, look, let me give you his background real quick. This guy was in finance. He went to consulting. He went to PepsiCo. He worked for some apparel company, and boom, he jumped into real estate. Now, because he's got an analytical mind, he first knew that he wanted to do units, and he found out he wanted to intersect two things: highest price point with tons of volume. So he did a bunch of research, go, okay, where can I find that in my market? The other thing, a few other things we talk about: why you need a clear marketing budget. We talk about, and this I want you guys to really focus on, why you should accept imperfect action and just get to market. Whatever you're doing does not have to be perfect. Get to market, get in front of customers, and then you can tweak it later. What we talk about, again, for 579 transactions, what he does for lead generation and the challenges he had when he had to learn to sell, because he was again, finance to consulting. He didn't have to worry about then finding the next customer in his former life. Now all of a sudden he did. And I know that there's somebody there, or you guys out there that are kind of find yourself in a similar situation. We talk about how he found, after finding his market, highest price point, highest volume, how he went about creating his marketing message. He knew he had to marry market message fit. We talk about how he did that, and then we this is early on. We talk about when you to walk away. Every single one of you guys have worked with a problem client, and you're in the middle of it, and you wish you wouldn't have. We talk about when to walk away. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Now, before we get to it, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping. Number one, if you don't know, we have a very strong Twitter tribe. I said twibe. I meant tribe. Twitter tribe. And the hashtag for this show is Unpack That Idea. Go ahead and tweet out on Twitter using that hashtag, and it's a big follow train. And by the way, there are many, many tweetable things in this episode. And as you all know, every single episode is brought to you by our sponsor. Today's sponsor happens to be our radio arm, realestateradioexperts.com. Now, today it's not up. 95% of it is done. We're going to be launching that in the next week or so. So check it out. And look, it's all about radio. Radio, I'll tell you this. 7 months ago, when we realized radio was an incredible opportunity to dominate your market, I spent whole 2014 doing nothing but interviewing top producing agents. What did they know that you didn't know? We hired the best copywriters. We found the nation's top marketing analysts, put them all together in a room to figure out our plan, our method, our approach, and we launched it. Two months ago, we sort of let the world know that we launched it, and we still haven't launched the website. That'll come in 7 days. But if you want to dominate your market, radio's the thing to do. That's it. Done. Every other thing, mailers, cold calling, whatever it is, they're all crowded. They're noisy. The only clear and uncrowded path to winning to success, to domination of your market is radio. So if you're interested and you think you're ready, send me an email and we'll chat. Until then, hey, let's get to the episode. On the show today, I am super, super excited. You guys know I always have top producing people come on the show. I love getting world-class people. Today's guest, number one guy in Keller Williams. He goes back and forth between number one, number two, number one, number two, but this guy is consistent top producer doing about $200 million a year. I'm thrilled to welcome Russell Rhodes. Hey, Russell, thanks for taking the time out today.
You bet. Thank you, Toby. I thank you for having me.
Pleasure's mine. Listen, take a minute. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Well, last year, I guess first of all, I'll start with myself. I grew up in the Dallas area. My father was a custom home builder and has been, I guess he started in 1981. And my mother was a residential real estate agent since 79. And grew up in the Dallas area and went to school at TCU and got a degree in finance. And when I graduated from college, I was telling my mom I wanted to go into real estate, and she's like, it's a terrible life. You'll never see your family. You're never at home. You don't want to do this. That's not why I paid for you to go to college. And so I worked for a company called Arthur Andersen, which was a Big 8 accounting firm, and then I worked for PepsiCo. Then I ran an apparel company, and by the time my oldest son was 5, we'd lived in 4 states, and he had lived in 4 states in his 5 years. And so my wife had it and said, we're not going to raise our family this way. And and I said, well, when you work for other companies, you got to go where the opportunity is. And she said, then create your own opportunity. We're not going to do this. So that's when I decided to come back to Dallas and start a real estate business. And so that was in 2000. And then after about a year, I saw that we could really build a real business out of it, not just a sales job. So as I started putting things together, my mom left Remax and she came and joined us. And then my father, about a year later, stopped building and he joined us. And so, kind of fast forward now, we have 9 administrative folks on our team. We have 10 buyer agents on the team. And last year we did, I think it was $194 million. We sold 578 homes.
Wow. And
so far year to date, we're probably... this is almost October. It is October of 2014, and I think year to date we've closed like 480 or 490 homes, and we have maybe 40 under contract. So we should probably hit the same number that we did last year, maybe a little bit more, maybe make it up maybe to 600, and break the 200 million mark hopefully.
Amazing, man. So just listen to your story, Russell. So I see a couple of things, and I want to figure out how this helped you build your business. Number one, your dad was a home builder. Now, my dad was not, my dad built homes. He was more a general construction guy, and he did the work, and, he drilled into me, strong work ethic, get up and do it and all that stuff. So I imagine your dad did the same thing to you. And then you went into finance. Like, did you not want any part of home building? I mean, why did you? I mean, those are two completely different things. How did you migrate from building homes and sweeping it up, sawdust to Arthur Andersen in finance?
Well, I think the first thing for me it's a great question. One was because my mother said to me that I don't want you going into this industry because of the challenges of it and just the lack of family time, because usually whenever people are off work is when we're working, i.e. weekends and nights. And the other issue was it was right in the middle of when the real estate crisis kind of was going on in the mid '80s, when the whole S&L, RTC days, et cetera. And so that whole world was kind of struggling on the building side. And the third reason would be because I do not have, even though my dad is extremely knowledgeable in building, I have what I realized pretty quick was that I had a lot of knowledge as long as I was there relying on my dad to tell me what to do next. But when he wasn't there to tell me what to do next, I didn't know what to do next. And so I decided I better do something I understand. And my forte has always been kind of a numbers. I'm kind of more of a numbers-oriented person.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. I can understand that. So Arthur Anderson, I mean, you were a consultant, right? So as a consultant, right, what consultants do, they go in, they think really big picture, and consultants think, in systems, right? They think in like, okay, how do we take this big thing? They don't really, for the most part, don't get down to weeds. It's like, okay, here are the systems. Let's implement them. I imagine that was the basis for you building your business like a business in real estate.
Yes. When I first got in the business, I think I might have had my license for 3 weeks when I hired my first assistant. And it wasn't because I had so much work that I needed an assistant, because I only had one customer kind of, sort of. So, but the thing that I realized is that I needed someone to help me to develop the websites and PowerPoint presentations and all the other marketing materials, and helping administratively take care of things so that I could focus 100% on meeting with clients and learning about the inventory. So that was my total focus, and I wanted someone else to focus on all of the administrative aspects of it, so I could, be focused on the most dollar productive activities.
So in terms of like your temperament and the way you're built, right? So you're built like a numbers guy. I would imagine you're a very rational guy, right? So when you look at a property, for example, right, the inventory, you see a property as in terms of metrics. And this is a question. I'm not telling you this. You know what I mean? Like, you see it as a rational person, whereas a home buyer is very emotional. They're not necessarily rational. How did you blend it? I mean, was that a challenge for you trying to sell a house because you want to sell it in a rational way? Like, hey, this is 10% under market, or great neighborhood where people just go, I love the backyard, I love the kitchen. Right.
Well, are you referring to when I'm working with the buyer or working with the seller in your example?
Either or. And I just want to know how, like, your mechanical mind works with an emotional mind, and if that has been a blessing or a challenge in either working with buyers or sellers.
Sure. Well, I think the first thing is I'm very analytical. So what I'll do is I will go through and I'll show them, like, let's say, for example, I'm working with the seller. I will go through and say, here's all of our competition, if you will, or homes of a similar profile, similar area. Maybe it's the same neighborhood or same type of genre, that if a buyer was coming in, these would all be properties that they would have looked at. And then I will help them I'll pull up pictures for them of those homes that have sold or that are under contract, and say, how do you think your home compares to those? And I'll try to give them a visual, because when you look at numbers on a piece of paper, and they look and they see the homes in there are selling between 120 and 135 a square foot. Everyone believes that their house then there should be $140 a square foot.
Yeah.
And so what I do is I'll go in and I'll help them by visually seeing, this is what the homes look like that sold for 125 a square foot, and here was the lot location, and here was roughly the floor plan and the flow of the home. And here's one that sold for 135 a square foot, and and here's one that sat on the market for 360 days, and which one do you think your house looks more similar to? And once I kind of get their buy-in of the condition of their home, and if they say, oh, mine looks as great as the 135, and I'll say, well, I don't know if you noticed, but this house has wrought iron spindle staircase and yours has the wood. Well, the wrought iron is what's really more popular today. And you see this right here is the hand-scraped hardwoods, and you have laminate floors. Those are not as well received. And I'll kind of go through that, trying to help educate them on the distinctions between their home and the one that sold for a lot more, or some things that we might need to do to update their home in order to make it sell for more or to net the most amount of money. So for me, it's just kind of taking them slowly through the steps, and I'm unless the person gets really defensive or aggressive, I'm pretty diplomatic, and I'm pretty good at just kind of walking them through slowly. If they start getting really aggressive and defensive, then I'm probably not as good with those kind of folks.
Got it. So Yeah, because that's got to happen. That's got to happen where you as an expert, you see it in black and white. You're like, clearly, man, this is $125 square foot house, but they push because they're emotional about it. They can't see the difference. They're like, oh, well, I know I have laminate flooring, but look, it's flooring. Like, look at my windows or whatever. Right. Look at my view, right. And that makes up. I mean, how do you get those people? This is not usually what we talk about on the show, but I'm curious. How do you get those people in line with your way of thinking?
Two parts. One is I try to show them the visual of their houses, and then what I'll say to them is, well, then let's self-discover. You're not in a hurry. You already said. Then let's try it your way at whatever, and let's see what happens after 30 days, and see what kind of response you get. And the market doesn't lie. The market will tell you.
Got it.
And if you don't get any showings, or if you whatever, then you'll see that that maybe that was that maybe we need to make some changes or change the price. And so a lot of it, I don't try to push them so hard, saying basically, if you don't do it my way, I'm not going to list the home.
Got it.
Typically, unless if the person's a handful, I will typically just tell them, look, I don't think I'm a good candidate, and I'll remove myself from the listing as soon as possible.
Got it.
Because I'm kind of at the point now where what I've realized is, and every time I violate this, I'm almost always, if not always, sorry for it, where I will say, yeah, this person's a pain, but I really think that home will sell quickly, or this person's really going to be a pain, going to be high maintenance, but if they're high maintenance and I don't think their house is going to sell immediately, I will for sure walk away from the listing. I won't take it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a skill. Being able to say no is a skill. I had this girl on the show, woman on the show, Nicole Truzowski. She sells, $5 million homes in Pebble Beach. And she literally told me, she said, if I cannot control my client, I will walk away from it. And I said, well, hold on. You sell $5 million homes. Like, can't you take some pain? And she's like, no, if I can't control my client, I will walk away. I'm like, wow. I mean, that's something special, I think.
Yeah, and it's funny. I don't know. I guess if I was selling a lot of $5 million properties, then I would be more like her, I guess. Let's say my average sales price is, I think it was $340,000 last year, and that's about what it is this year. Well, if I had a $200,000 seller who was going to be a real challenge, I would probably walk away from the listing. So I guess if she has a lot of the $5 million, then it just becomes worse for me, a $5 million one. But even saying that, I can tell you I had a $2.5 million one that my mother wanted to take, and I kept saying, I don't want it. And unfortunately, we took it, and we dealt with this person for 3 months, no more than that, probably 6 months. And then we, and then we didn't work with her anymore. And my contention is any of those people that are too high maintenance, very seldom does it ever pay off. Every once in a while you might do okay, but very seldom is it ever worth it. And it's better just to, hopefully depart as friends the best you can. Even though it's funny, they never mind rejecting us, but if we tell them, we don't think it's a good fit, they're heavily offended, and they can't believe that someone doesn't want to work with them, which it just cracks me up, even though, of course, they never hesitate to tell us. But they just can't stand the rejections. I think they're just not used to hearing it from realtors to say, look, I'm not interested. And one of the things I keep trying to press my agents on is that all we have is our time. That's all you have to sell is your time and your knowledge, right? But it's your time that then made up of sharing your knowledge and basically implementing it. And if you get distracted too much by people that are too high maintenance, it's not worth the drag on your time, and it'll cost you more money. And I know it's hard. And the truth is if when I'm real busy, I'm more likely to walk away from people that are a problem. And if I'm slower, I'm more likely to tolerate it because I'm just so thankful that I have business at that moment.
Yeah.
So, it depends on the moment and what's going on in my life at that moment. But I try to, in a perfect world, if the person seems like they're going to be too high maintenance, to walk away.
Listen, I think that is great advice because in addition to just being a complete time suck, the other piece is it's an emotional suck, right? I mean, you go into whenever you go into those challenging situations, challenging personalities, you walk away drained, man.
Right.
You need,
exactly.
so I think for everybody listening, that's great advice. And walk away, and and there's such a difference when you work with somebody you enjoy. You're uplifted after getting off the phone call, or meeting or whatever it is. So I think that's great advice. Hey, for you, Russell. So again, you're a smart guy. You went from finance, you went to Arthur Andersen, and that was a big. I went to UCSD, and everybody, all the smart kids said, "Oh, I want a job at Arthur." They want to go into consultant. So you were at Andersen, you went to Pepsi, you ran an apparel company. When you got into real estate and you looked around, did you think this was going to be like shooting fish in a barrel? Because you were such a cut above the typical real estate agent.
I think at first I was pretty overwhelmed because I'd never been in the marketing sales side before. My focus has always been more operational, more process driven, and not. But I never had to worry about going out and getting the next customer. And to me, it's been the biggest, the most humbling experience. And where I'm probably the most learning based is trying to figure out how for lead generation, because I understand it's the livelihood, it's what will control whether you're going to be successful or not. Obviously, once you get it, you got to perform well with it and take care of the client, etc. But the first part is if you don't have customers, you don't have a business, and so it's how do you generate that business, and so that's where I'm very learning based and trying to explore a variety of different options on where to capture clients at.
Got it. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think you said a lot of things. We have a very strong Twitter tribe that follows this show, and I think you said a few things there that are very tweetable. So your background is operations, process-driven stuff, not sales. Mm-hmm. So what were some of the first things that you implemented, right? So you got 3 weeks, you had one customer and one maybe customer. You said, oh, you know what? I'm going to go hire an assistant. What are some of the operational systems that you implemented early on in your career?
Well, at the very first, the things that this was in 2000, so even though there were obviously websites and the internet out there, it was not as huge as it is now. So one thing I try to do is try to understand what did I want my marketing message to be, what did I want my persona to be, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so I probably spent a week just studying all the different websites, not just the ones here in Dallas, but the ones throughout the country on anyone that if I'd heard that they do any kind of units, and trying to understand what do their websites look like, and then trying to look and compare and see what kind of message do I want to convey, and how do I and getting that website created so that I had a landing page to send people to, or when people looked me up, that there would be credibility. And so that was one thing. The other thing was developing what my flyers would look like, kind of getting my whole email stuff, all that stuff set up. The next thing was identifying what kind of letters and communication I would have with clients after they go under contract, and how do we keep them informed, and what's our processes from the time we go under contract till the time it closes, and what are all the different steps, and going back into the listing side, and from the time we go in the listing appointment to taking all the way through until you get it on the market and you get under contract, and then also starting to look at the lead generation piece of it and say, how do you track the leads coming in, and how do you make sure that you follow up, and what's the systems we're going to implement, et cetera. So it was me just kind of taking each of the kind of different phases, if you will, of the real estate process and really studying them, and starting to do some things. And as I make mistakes, I try to fix the process. And so, and I'm still constantly adjusting the way we do things, because we don't have it totally dialed in.
That's amazing. So you wanted to figure out your brand. You wanted to get that marketing message right, and I think that's really important. Right, matching your message to your market is critical. All that stuff you just said. You said you took about a week. Most people would tweak that, and it would be 6 months later, and they you know what I mean, and they still wouldn't have it done. what is it with you that you were able to just go, okay, boom, 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 this is good enough. I'm not going to tweak it anymore. Like, let me move on to the next bucket.
Yeah, it's funny is I watch a lot of engineer types, people that came from either the IT world or engineer types, and I think because they see that their comfort level is more in creating whatever the IT components are or the website type stuff or whatever, and people fall back on what their comfort level is, and so that's what they'll do. Whereas what I will do is I understood what was critical was getting in front of clients. And so I knew that I had someone else that, and whatever I created, as long as it was good enough at this moment, I always have time to tweak it. But if I mess around with it for 6 months, trying to get it all right, and that's my focus, I won't be in business in 6 months.
Right.
And so I had to generate revenue. And, I already had I came from the corporate world, so, I was making a couple $100,000 a year, and I had a lifestyle that I had to make that kind of money, at least. And so I didn't have time to keep trying to perfect the other stuff. I just had to get it good enough and keep moving and try to develop my client base, and then I can always circle back around and also be tweaking as I saw things. Let's change this or change that. But again, my focus was to get enough up and going that was good enough, and then start getting customers and not just fall back into what I feel comfortable doing, but what I know needs to happen to make the business successful.
Yeah, no, I love it, and I think too many people would mess around that with 3, 4, or 5 months because and really they're avoiding the real work because they go, oh, I'm messing with my marketing message, I'm working, but that's not working, because what you said earlier, you said everything is about having customers in front of you.
Yep.
And I want to talk about lead generation in a second, but before we get there, here's what I want to explore a little bit. And I'm curious about this. So you came up with your persona, fundamentally your brand and your marketing message and all that stuff. Now, whatever you did, right, your flyers and all that stuff, it catered, it spoke to this $340,000 average sale. Your average was $340 about last year. It's the same this year. Last year, you're going to do about the same number of units as this year. Why did you just, I don't know what, you're in Dallas. Why did you focus on this 340 and not go upstream to 1 million?
Well, great question. First of all, I didn't start at 340. I started, and actually it wasn't my intent. There's different ways that I would do it now than if I was starting all over than what I did do at the time. I started more in the neighborhood that I lived in. So the house I lived in was about a maybe $350,000 house, and so that was the people that I was around. And so I started at that price range only because that's where I lived, and that was my sphere, if you will.
Yeah.
But I moved here from Tennessee to Dallas, and so when I came here, there was absolutely zero business that I walked into. It wasn't like I knew people for 5 years and I got into real estate. So what happened was, all mine was totally from scratch. And also same with my mother, in that where she did join me, she does an incredible job in servicing the clients, but she wasn't great at always staying in touch with the client, because that was before the whole world they did that, and so she did not have a tremendous amount of repeat or referral business, mainly just because she did not have the systems in place to stay in touch with them. And so for me, the price point initially was not because here's the price point, here's a price point I'm going to specifically target. It was more, that's where I was at. However, I can tell you that if I was in an area that had a low price point, I would go to another area. Now, for ours, homes in the 340 range is actually in this area is pretty good, and you can make it work on that. I would have I couldn't do what I do and make it work for $200,000 houses, because when I look at how many touches I have to do, et cetera, for geographical farming, the numbers just don't work. And so what's one of the things, and so one of the things that I keep focusing on is one of the things that I keep focusing on is looking at where are the areas that there's a lot of homes are selling in and what price points, and then trying to analyze and say, can I get into that area? One of the challenges that I think people do is they think, I'm going to go after the $1 million homes because when I sell one, they got a huge payday. But if if there's only 8 houses in your area that sell for $1 million a year, then that's not the market I want to go into. I want to go into where there's enough volume, the highest possible price point where there's a lot of volume. And then I try to figure out how do I create my marketing and my lead capture around that which will make sense, and I can have a viable business.
Interesting. Really interesting. And you've mentioned that twice. You said, number one, when you're looking at your brand, you said, hey, I looked around the internet and around the world, the nation, for people who did units, and I tried to, I want to know what they were doing. Just now, again, you echoed that. Where can I do the highest price point and the most volume? Was that for you? I mean, and you're doing both, right? You're doing tons and tons of units today. Did you have that idea in the beginning? Did you know from the start that you're like, oh man, I want to put up huge number of units, and that's what I want to do here, or you know what I mean? Because I should stop talking when I ask a question and I have to follow it up with a question. That's bad. But maybe you could speak to that, and I'll follow up with something else.
Sure. Well, first of all, I don't think I ever thought that my goal is to sell 300 homes a year. Or 200 homes a year or 100 homes a year per se. I think my first thought was truly, and I wish I was that much of a visionary, but I'm embarrassed to say I'm not. I was more saying my monthly overhead is $12,000 a month at home, and I got to figure out a way to make sure that I can at least cover that, or I'm going to keep eating into my savings. And then as it started, and so then part of the process I started doing is going to different coaching programs to try to understand this whole marketing thing, which I had no concept of how it worked. And so I started going to, Craig Proctor stuff and Buffini and some of the others. And then when I did that, and then I'd see people get up there and they would say that they sell, 125 homes, 150 homes, 200 homes. Once I saw that was doable, and then I started understanding what goals are possible, what numbers are possible, and then I started setting myself then on those goals. But I didn't really know it was possible or not. It wasn't really, and again, I wish I had the vision, but I don't. I was just trying to figure out how do I, make my house payment.
Yeah.
And then as I started going out and trying to learn more about how to make that happen, I started seeing people who did a lot of units, and then I started realizing the possibility of it, and and then that's always what's helped keep me motivated.
That's interesting. I'm always curious about guys like you, and how you keep the pedal to the metal. Because you had a corporate job, you're making a couple $100,000 a year. That's a great living. There was a point where, when you started, you were taking out of your savings, and there was a point where you go, okay, man, I've matched it. I've matched my past salary, and then there's a point where you're like, oh. Now I'm making 300. Now I'm making 400. Now I'm making 500. And you make a ton of money today. Why didn't when you started making 500 or 700? Why didn't you go? This is good. I'm good. I'm gonna sit back and relax, and I'm good. I'm super happy with 7. What is it about somebody like you that you just keep the pedal to the metal, and you're like, you know what? I did 500. I want to do 600 transactions.
I think that would be the question that my wife wants me to go see a shrink for, because I think that's the question she asks, and she doesn't ask it in a, well, this is really cool. What makes you think like this? Her thing is, what the hell's wrong with you? Right. Why can't you, stop it, enjoy it, and yada, yada, yada. And that's one of the things actually that I'm trying to do is trying to figure out ways that I can improve my quality of life, et cetera. Because, the challenge is when you're growing all the time, and I'm so thankful. I mean, God has blessed our business so much, and I'm so thankful. So I'm not complaining. But the challenge with doing it is that it takes a lot of time to keep it managed and to provide a high level of customer service and not let things fall through the cracks as you're building it. At some point, obviously the question is when is enough, and you just maintain what you've got. the challenge that I have is twofold, I guess. One is, in this business, I don't know how you do just maintain it, because my concern is the minute you start maintaining it, I'm worried that it's going to go down dramatically.
Yeah.
Because I think you've always got to be focused on what's going on in the market and how do you compete. So that's one issue, is I don't know how to do it. Or I don't know because I'm so worried about if I do it. If you said to me, look, Russ, you right now could continue to have a business that, you'll do $190-something million in volume, and you'll sell 500-something homes a year, and you don't have to be involved in the business day to day. You don't have to do any listings. You don't have to do whatever. Here's your team to do it. And to replace what you do will cost us $350,000 a year to hire 2 or 3 people that do what I currently do. And now you're going to make $350,000 less a year, but you've only got to work 15 hours a week.
Yeah.
If you told me that, I'd take it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
There wouldn't even be a blink.
Right.
The problem is me trying to figure out how to hire the people and not lose the momentum. And I'm always worried about, once you lose the momentum, it's so hard to get it started again.
Yeah.
So it's always the fear of losing the momentum, I think, that keeps me going, because I'm so worried what would happen if I stop. And it's funny, in 2008 or 9, I think it was, when the whole market was going crazy poorly and was crashing, if you will, around me. At that time, I think in 2007, I sold 290 homes, which was the most I'd ever sold. Before that, I'd sold like 240. So that next year, I thought, well, I got to really cut my costs. So what I did was I cut my advertising at the time from about $130,000 in advertising to less than $15,000.
Wow.
In that year. And what really surprised me was, when I did that, is that I only went from 290 homes to 265 homes. So I only went down roughly 10%, and this was also in a very, 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 very declining market.
Yeah.
But what I found is even though I cut back my advertising dramatically, by more than 90%, 92%, 93%, my units only went down by 10%. So then I thought, well, maybe I can get away with this again the next year. And then I thought, I'm too scared to do that. So I started advertising again, because I was too scared to see what would happen. How many years could I do that? Can you run on the coattails of your previous years of marketing?
Yeah.
And so I don't know that answer yet. And also going back to the issue about what keeps you going, is that I think that I don't know yet exactly how you pull back and be able to have it'd be one thing if they said you make $100 an hour, and if you work, would you work 20 hours less a week, and so therefore you're going to make $2,000 less or whatever it is a week, or could you live with that? And if I said yes, then I can directly understand I cut back this number of hours and this is what I should make. The challenge I have in what I do is that I don't know where the direct correlation is of X number of hours to this is how much more I will not make, right?
Yeah, no, I hear you. And again, I can see the way you think, Russell. I almost called you Russ. I can see the way you think, man. And this goes back to your Anderson, your numbers. You want to correlate everything. Yeah, and again, so you cut your marketing by 92%. And it barely made a dent. I would call, cutting 90, but only losing 10% in actual numbers is, I would say, just a dent, because you had that echo effect out in the community of what you had done was still out there. And, I don't know that something like that you can measure. And I know that you would like to measure it. Let me ask you this, in terms of, in the same vein of what you were just talking about. There's a difference between, because we are talking about temperament. There's two different kind of temperaments, right? There's the startup guy, and if you look at founders, right? They're hard driving, type A. Those are founders, and then there are CEOs, and and that's why if you look at tech companies, there's the founder guys who go and start it, but they can't be the CEO because management is a whole different skill set. Now, with founders, what they do is they have a hard time letting go because right, nobody's going to do it as well as them. I'm sensing a little bit of that in you. I mean, do you have some of that where you're like, oh man, I can't hire that guy for 150 or 2 people for 150 because they're not going to do as good as me. Do you struggle with that?
I definitely do. I'm embarrassed to say. But the thing for me is, and I guess it is, what I need to do is go out and find the great people. My concern is when you go and you compete against other competitors on listing presentations, and if they have their listing partners go out and they go against me, I usually do pretty well. The question is then how will so then a lot of those guys, then they keep doing the listings themselves because they know that if they keep putting in listing partners, then they're going to struggle, right?
Yeah.
Against the other. So then the next question then is who's going to blink first now and put the listing partners in so they can put listing partners in, let them fight it out, and us have more of a life, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that I'm trying to figure out actually is how do you find that balance, and how are you okay with maybe instead of a 85-90% conversion of listing appointments you go on that you get, the people who actually list that you get, to bring a listing partner in, and basically now you're going to get 70%, right? And am I okay with that? And am I okay with losing market share in neighborhoods that I have market share in? Am I okay with losing that momentum? And then do I just open up a Pandora's box of continuing a spiraling down? And again, I know it's not prudent and you shouldn't operate based on fear, and I understand that. The hard thing for me is the understanding it mentally, and then the part of that really resonates in me, and it's probably the thing that's kept me moving the whole time, is only because I never know how bad it can get if I stop doing something, and I'm too afraid to stop doing it to find out, right? Kind of like with that thing, with the advertising, right? I stopped for 1 year, but then I got too chicken, and so then I started doing it again. And so I never, and what's interesting is the next year, and I increased it back all the way up again, I sold 266 units. So I sold 290 in 2007, and then I went down to 265 when I cut down to 90-something% of my marketing. I increased my marketing all the way back up again, and I only sold one more unit.
How funny! How funny!
And then the next year I sold 275, and then I started, then I went from what, 275 to 357, and then to 481, and then to 578.
Got it. There's a guy. I don't want to talk about this on the radio, but or on the show afterwards. There's a guy. I'll say his name now because you may know him, but he's a friend of mine that I would love to introduce you to. I think you guys. He's a KW guy too. David Osborne. Do you know David?
Yeah, he's actually my broker.
What?
I know him very well.
How funny, man! He's your broker.
He's a broker at my office at Preston Frankfurt office.
Got it.
And he's from Austin, and his mom, I think it was like Thea Osborne, I think it is, and his father recently passed away. Great guy. Great guy. Very entrepreneurial.
Oh, very, very. But what he does, and again, this is not for everybody in the audience, but we spent a lot of time talking. But he, and I was just at his house last month. We spent 3 days together out in Steamboat. But for him, his decisions are, he will only make $1 million decisions. So in terms of like all these things, he's like, oh, listen, if I can't make me $1 million or lose me $1 million, like I'm not going to make those. I only make $1 million decisions. And he started out with $100,000 and moved it on up. But anyhow, so you know him, so I can't help there. Let me go back for a second. I want to talk about, you started in real estate. And you started selling the 340 because that was who was in your sphere. Now, what you said earlier, Russell, was you said, hey, I started from scratch. So what are the things that you did? So how did you build your sphere? You started from scratch. What are some of the things that you did? I don't know if you can remember, 14, 15 years ago, some of the things you did to go out and meet people and put them on your mailing list or interact with more people.
Sure. Well, what I did was this one particular neighborhood that I lived in, it was a big master plan neighborhood that had about 2,500 homes. And I lived in one section of it that had about 400 or 500 homes. And so in the section I was in was pretty much the middle range. So those prices, that were more in the twos, that were where the majority of the neighborhood was. And then there was one neighborhood that was above ours that the homes were selling more at the time in the to 5 range. And so I lived kind of in the middle one. And so one thing that I did was, it was a couple of things. One is my wife is very heavily involved in the boys, because at the time my boys were 6 and 4, and so the boys were involved in sports, and my wife's very involved and very social, and so through all of that we met some people, but and through their sports activities, we'd meet the parents, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that probably helped me the most was that I was always out studying the market. So like if I didn't have a client at the very first, which I didn't obviously have a lot of clients at the very first, what I would do is I would create different scenarios of here's a buyer I've got coming into town tomorrow. What property, and here's his scenario. He works for Verizon. He's going to be working over in the Richardson Plano corridor. He makes $125,000 a year. He has X amount to put down. He has 2 kids. Schools are important to him. His wife also has a job, and she works so and so, and they want to be somewhere in the middle. And I'd create a scenario, and then I would go through and identify the houses, and I'd go out and actually go preview those houses. So I'd preview, I don't know, anywhere from probably 12 to 25, 30 homes a day, every day.
Wow.
And so what I'd be doing is I would be trying to, because I need to learn the inventory. And also if I just randomly look, then when I'd go look at houses, I didn't have purpose. And so then when I would talk to people on the phone, and if they fit roughly the profile of what I had done some research on, then I could say, oh, yeah, there's this beautiful home I saw over in Soham. This is how much money it is. Have you seen that home yet? No, I haven't. Oh, God, you got to see it. Let me send you a link to it, and you can check it out. And if you'd like to go see it. What I found is that people love to talk to people who are knowledgeable about real estate. And so when I was in my start groups, I started off with RE/MAX, and I was there for a year before I went to Keller. And I think there's 4 or 5 other people in my start group, if you will, and they would all just sit in the office thinking the phone's going to ring, and magically a client appears, and of course they never do. Yeah. And so what I would always do is I would go out, and then I'd just start interacting with, and of course I'd meet some sellers when I was over their houses, and if they would talk to me, I'd talk to them, and one thing led to another, and sometimes I get listings from that in the future date, not right then, and I never did. I'm really big on not crossing a sign. I mean, I'm very big into the ethical part of it, right? I mean, I just don't do that. But what would happen is, let's say they talk to me and they said, hey, I'm really glad that you came here, because I tell them what I'm doing. I tell them why I'm looking at the inventory and all that, and then they just kind of like what I was doing, I guess. And so anyway, then I started getting some listings that way, and then they started selling relatively quick, and and then it kind of snowballing from there. But the first thing that what I would do is I would go to a lot of new construction and go to the model homes, and I'd go and study those, and then I'd study the homes around it that are the pre-owns to see how could the pre-owns compete against the new construction, and what would the pre-owns have to sell in order to compete against the new construction, and how did the new construction look differently inside than these pre-owned homes that are around it. So I was trying to figure out a relationship of price of I can get a 700 square foot home or a home that's 25% larger in the pre-owned and for the same price as a new construction, but here's the pros and cons that you're getting with it. And so all along I'm always trying to think of a relationship of how this relates to the other thing and how it affects price or not. And then so when I'm talking to people, I had in my brain some kind of where I could remember it. And so, like, for example, like when I talk to people, I'll forget everybody's names. I don't remember people's names 5 minutes later, but I can talk to you and I can tell you everything about anything you told me, and I can remember it for 10 years. Yeah. But I can't remember someone's name, but all the stuff like what your dad did, where you grew up, what the challenge, everything about your life story I can remember except for a name. And so what I try to do is with the properties is I tried to develop it under a story of here was my scenario I was going after. And so then when I talk to people, I would I could talk to them about properties, and I tell my agents all the time, you've got to decide either you're going to be a tour guide, you're going to be someone who just opens doors for people and you provide no value, or you're going to go out and you're going to provide value. And the way you provide value is A, the market, and two, I hear a lot of these agents will say, oh, well, that's for my lender to answer. I don't do the lender stuff. Well, I do a lot of lender stuff. I mean, when I say lender stuff, I don't tell them what the rates would be that day,
right.
But I am pretty knowledgeable about all the different financing options, and I'm very knowledgeable about different tax issues around 1031 exchanges, or about about different rules associated with when you sell your home, if there's any tax consequences on it, and how are second homes handled, and how does that affect the tax consequences, and all that stuff. And I always tell people I'm not a CPA, but what I want to make sure of is that I provide enough value. So I'll give you an example. I was on a listing appointment, and the lady was telling me that, that her mom and dad's house was just put in her name, that they just moved over to her name. And I said to her, well, and she had an attorney do it, et cetera. And I said, my concern is, I was listening to her, and I said, how much is the home worth? And she said it was about $150,000, and we moved it in her name because her dad was involved in a business that might not make it, and so they thought to do it to shelter it. And so I said, well, did you review the tax consequences of them giving you a gift like that? And she said, well, we went to an attorney. And I said, I know, but my question is, did you discuss with them what are the tax consequences, because you cannot get a gift? And I said, I don't know exactly how it all works, but I think it's roughly that you can't get more than whether it's $12,000, $14,000, $15,000 gift per family. So like her mom could give her a $15,000 gift, and her dad could, or whatever the exact number is. But then let's say in theory that's what it was, and it was $30,000. Let's say they somehow said that much of the house or whatever, I don't know. But what do you do about the other money? And you're about to have tax consequences because you just received that gift. And I said, I don't know that for sure, but you need to ask that question. And I said, and also I don't know how you could break it out when I say the $15,000 from your mom and dad, and how you would do it. And I'm sure there's some issues here, and I don't want to get onto the radio about things that I would say.
Yeah.
But what happened was when she went back and asked them, and she called me back and she goes, oh my God, I have a huge tax liability, and they never told me.
Right.
And so, it's the attorney. She went to an attorney to do it, and the attorney, whatever. So anyway, so one thing led to another, and I helped guide her to the right direction and helped her find some people that can make her do it right. And I saved her probably $30-something thousand in taxes. But because of that, they've referred a lot of people to me in the last year since that happened, because I provide more value than just someone who takes people around in a car and opens the door.
Right.
I try to provide value, and I always tell people I'm not an attorney, I'm not a CPA, but here's things you might want to think about, because that doesn't make sense. Even when the attorneys tell them something, there's lots of times the attorneys, and most of the time they're right, I'm sure, but there's sometimes they're not, or they just don't stop and listen enough. Or let's say there's divorce situations, and I'll help people say, hey, here's some other things I saw in other divorce situations you need to ask about. This is a way to protect yourself. And so I'm trying to provide value.
Yeah, no, I love it, and I think that's a huge takeaway for everything. That's provide value, and and run through scenarios, right? I loved again you explained to that how you would test yourself, right? Okay, I have this avatar, I have this guy who makes this much money. This is what's important to him. What can I show him? And I think in terms of providing value, I'll tell you, and we have to start wrapping up here. And I appreciate you staying on the line with me, but I'll tell you a quick situation with me. So I flipped a bunch of houses between 2009 and 2012. I only bought one condo. I bought this condo. It was a great deal. So I bought the condo, and we rehabbed it. I put it on the market, and I started to get offers. Now the deal is, with an FHA loan here in California, with an FHA loan, and you're going to sell a condo, there's lots of rules that take place, right? It needs to be 60% owner occupied. The
Yep.
board or the association needs to have so much insurance, so much cash flow, and all that stuff. And whatever. And the bottom line is, I didn't have that. And all of a sudden I was like, holy crap, I'm stuck with this problem condo. And I ended up getting rid of it like 30 days later. So it was no big deal. But I wish my agent who would have told me, hey, listen, when you get rid of this thing, you need a traditional person, because this won't qualify for FHA. So I love that. I hope everybody takes that away from you, Russell. Listen,
I want to say one thing that's interesting. I'll tell you that's funny. Well, I had a listing yesterday that a person was actually was going to lease their home out to go buy my client's home, and I went back and I said, and he talked to his lender, and his lender said he's qualified. I said, look, how much money do you have? If you're going to lease out your home, can you qualify to carry both houses? Because if you do not have at least 20% equity in your home, you cannot count any of the rental income you have coming from it. Also, another thing you need to look at is if you haven't been on rental properties for more than a year, you got to have a track record of time, or also it'll affect your ability to count the income. And it's funny, after I said that, they came back 2 hours later, and the lender said, oops, he's not qualified. And so, but what would have, if I wouldn't have said that, what would happen is we would have gotten all the way through, would have gotten through 3 weeks into the process, a week and a half before closing, and all of a sudden they would have found out, the home doesn't have at least 20% equity in it, so therefore his ratios aren't high or low enough, so therefore, he's not, he can't close on it. And to me, again, it's just, as you can become more knowledgeable, instead of sticking your head in the sand saying, I don't have to worry about that, the more knowledgeable you are, the more that you can anticipate problems and help your client, rather than being reactive and not properly representing your client.
Yeah.
So
no,
that's mine.
I agree with it. So listen, I've been wanting to wrap around. You said that you always stay learning based, and I had Dave Jenks on the show who co-wrote The Millionaire Real Estate Agent with Gary Keller. And that was Dave's bit. Dave was like, hey, you have to be learning based. Now for you, you said, where I have the most room to grow, I think you said this, it's around lead generation. And because lead generation is everything, can you, in just 5 minutes, because we have to wrap up in 10. So can you take 5, and there's a few questions I want to ask after this, but can you in 5 minutes tell us a little bit about lead generation and maybe what's working for you in your business right now?
In lead generation for me right now, there's, I guess, the main source I have now is more past client referrals, and we're probably running somewhere around 40% of our business is past client referral. We also do geographical farming. We'll do about I think we do about 12,000 homes that we geographically farm to. And we also do some internet, but that's not a great play for us as far as, different. So our two main sources are geographical farming and past client.
So on past clients, earlier you said that your mom sold real estate, and you said that you told us that she wasn't very good at staying in touch, and because she wasn't good, she didn't have a good referral channel. What do you do to stay in touch with your clients that you can generate 40% of $200 million from past clients?
Sure. One of in that book that you referred to that Dave Jenks wrote with Gary Keller, co-authored The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, one of the things that it talks about is doing basically a 33 touch, where you stay in touch with your past clients in your sphere, et cetera, numerous times, not just one time a month. And so we follow that principle that I think we touch, depending on how many kids they have, because we send out birthday cards and and anniversary cards for their wedding, and anniversary cards for when they purchase a home, and all the kids' birthdays and the parents' birthdays, they get gift cards from us on their birthdays. And so depending on how many kids there are would affect how many touches, but I'd say a low end of 27 touches up to about 35 or 36 touches a year that we will make to our database, if you will.
Got it. Okay, so if we look at that 33 touch thing, and they give some examples in there, stuff you could send out, and they'll say recipes. Now, recipes are played out, man. Most people are like, I don't want to see another recipe from a real estate agent.
I don't do that.
Yeah. So birthday cards are great. Like, what are some of the other things that you can reach out and touch your people with?
Well, I won't touch anybody with anything that's not. That's either me personally sending something for them, whether it's the birthday cards or anniversary cards or pies or popcorn or whatever it is, or something real estate related to educate them on the market.
Huh.
And so, because I'm not a chef, so in my opinion, I have no business and no credibility on me sending out a recipe card, which I think is yeah, I don't say negative things to people about it, but I just don't think it's,
Yeah.
I don't think it makes sense.
Yeah.
What I need to stay focused on is being the expert in real estate, and that I'm the person that they look to when they're trying to figure out, should they buy investment property, should they sell their home, should they buy another home, is this a good value for them? I want them to think of me about that, not what they're going to make for Thanksgiving dinner.
Got it. Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. So, okay. Start wrapping up here. I have two questions that I always end up, two same questions. And here's the first one. And I'm an aspiring agent. I have $25. What book should I go get today? And because you're a KW guy, you know Gary Keller books. I get too many of those.
Well, I can tell you, first of all, what would I do? Well, probably I would get the E-Myth book.
Yeah.
The one I get.
E-Myth Revisited by Michael. It's sitting on my desk right now. Michael Garber.
Yep.
I've read
so
it.
That's probably the book that I need to now implement more, because I'm not doing a great job at that.
Yeah.
But the concept is right on the mark. And then the other books that I would be reading would be things related to anything to do with marketing. I guess it depends on where your strength is coming from.
Yeah.
And then what I try to do is read to supplement or help me to grow in the areas that I'm a little bit stronger in the accounting, finance area, and less so in the marketing area. Or I have been. I'm probably pretty hold my own with most people in the marketing now, but I can always grow and get better, and so that's where I try to study and learn the most.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I spend a lot of time on that too, and I'll tell you briefly what I do, and this is for after the call, but what I do is I'm really studying the old direct marketing guys, right? The guys that used to do catalog sales, right? Those are the guys that I'm studying today. Brian Kurtz and Jay Abraham and Dan Miller. I try to get into everybody's funnel to see what they do. How, once I am on their list, how are they marketing to me? And I've learned a lot just by getting in other people's funnels. And by the way, for everybody in the audience, if you want to read E-Myth Revisited or a Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which you should read that book every year, you can get a free copy. Use our link, audibletrial.com/superagentslive. Get a free copy and try it out. Here's the last question I normally ask, and it's always fascinating the answers I get. But for you, you're a busy guy. You have a team. You have this thriving business. You have a family. You have a wife and kids. Do you have any personal habits, Russell, that you feel have contributed to your success?
It's such a cliche, I guess, but work ethic is huge to me. Probably my biggest thing is if I tell somebody I'm going to do something, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that I honor my word. And it's imperative to me that if I tell somebody I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And also, first of all, I think first and foremost, I truly believe this, and I don't know why, but I'm very thankful that I think God has blessed our business, and I think that it's only because of Him looking after, and I think I got to now step up and do my part of this, but I think God has totally blessed our business, and I totally believe that. As far as work ethics for me or whatever for me, one is I think everything I try to do, I think what would I want someone to do for me in the same circumstances. For example, whether it's my buyer's agents, I've had some of them for 8, 9, 10 years. And people don't normally hold on to buyer's agents that long. My administrative staff, I have extremely low turnover. I mean, like most of my people have been with me 7, 8, 9 years or more. And the reason is because I pay them well, I pay them more than what my coach tells me I should pay them. I give them 401k, I give them the insurance, we have parties, we do all kinds of stuff for them all the time. And when the market turned down and all the other realtors were being told they should cut their salary staff or cut their staff salary, I never did it to any of mine, because my view is that the $5,000 that I take away from them, and now instead of me making $300, I make $295 that year, is that $5,000 to them makes a difference whether they make a car payment or not.
Yeah.
And for me, I feel like a pig. So what I don't want to, so I think for me is always trying to think, what would I want if I was in that person's shoes, and try to take it from that approach. And that's what I do for the customers that I work with, or for my staff, or for the other agents. I try to do, kind of that golden rule thing. And I know it's a cliche or whatever, but I really try to live my life that way, about what would I want someone to do for me if the roles were reversed.
Man, great. I love it. Great advice. And we're just at 59 minutes, right on the money. Listen, Russell, I'm sure you're always looking for talent. I know you're in Dallas. Tell everybody where they can reach out, find you. I encourage my audience to reach out and say thanks for you to, coming on the show. So where can people find you, say thank you? And look, I want to do my part right now. Hey, Russell, thanks for taking the time and coming on and sharing with us. Where can people find you, Russell?
Yes. Well, my email address is Russell Rhodes. So it's RUSSELL Rhodes, RHODES @KW.com. And then, they're welcome to call me. My office number is 972-899-5600. And I think certainly call me, and I'll help in any way I can if they have questions, whatever. But, and right now it's a better time for me in the fall than it is in the spring and summer when it's busy. I'm not as available because I'm focusing on the business so much. But right now, if people need help, I'm more than happy to help.
I love it. All right, man. Hey, thanks, Russell. Let's definitely stay in touch.
Thank you so much.
See you, bud.
Bye.
Let's go.